Okay, I'm trying to be live with the spreadsheets too.
Okay.
As well.
We'll give you a
There's
minute.
changes if somebody wants to see what it looks like.
Okay.
But anyway, this is what we got. We're ready to go when the board is.
Okay, motion to open the meeting. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, trustee Marshall,
Aye.
trustee Lightgev,
Aye.
trustee Coe,
Aye.
trustee Lanfair,
Aye.
Mayor Plummer,
Aye.
motion passes.
Okay, so, thank you for closing those. So we have our budget workshop, and does any board member have a conflict of interest or anything to disclose regarding the items before us?
I do not.
I do not.
I do not.
I do not.
I do not. Dorothea, cliff notes on open meeting?
To our non-attendees at this moment, if you're wanting to participate via Zoom, please raise your hand or put your question in Q&A, and I will be happy to ask the board in the Q&A. If you want to speak to the board, raise your hand. And please give your name and address if allowable by law, and otherwise, let's all be nice to each other. And
Okay.
There's nobody online?
No.
Makes you feel better about it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was going to offer to the board, please turn off the camera. We'd have sound if they have a problem being people watching them eat.
yeah.
But, I mean, that's the board decision.
Thank you. Okay, first up, the multi-year capital and financial plan.
Yes, the plan in front of you is the requested changes from the last meeting. Hopefully, we were able to encompass what the board was looking for. We removed the green infrastructure off. I should say Danielle did that. Kind of smooth it. There's still some formatting we need to straighten out, but otherwise, there we go. At least for the 24-25 sheets, they do reconcile to the financial sheets. Everything goes to the financial sheets, let me just put it that way. But what you're seeing in the financial sheets on the multi-year, you're also seeing in the spreadsheets from the budget, and you're also seeing in the actual computer-generated budget sheets. Okay, so
Just to clarify, only in 24-25 did you take the cost estimates and push them into the description. In every other year, you've left it for us to see the totals.
yes, you're still debating.
Yeah.
We sat down, reviewed the equipment, the board had given it like a 200,000 for equipment. We looked at it, made some changes, finessed, and maneuvered those numbers into the actual budget. I put in the bond payment, as well as Zach will go over the possible lease payment for the one piece that was added as well, as part of what we're offering to the board as a resolution with the pileup we have.
The bottleneck, yeah.
Thank you.
And if I may, this would suggest that anything that isn't funded in 24-25 in the capital improvement update that we may do in a
It
subsequent
has to
year,
shift.
it then shifts down, and then we do the same thing, and it's just. a
Correct.
nice-
If you're in agreement, then we shift it and we make the shifts from there. We didn't want to make that decision for the board.
Yep.
Anything that was already going to be covered in the budget, we noted
Yep.
that it could be handled. And anything that couldn't be is left with a note that it needs to be shifted.
So now we're making decisions. Do we do it or do we push it?
Correct.
Okay.
And this is just one iteration of a way to get to an end.
Mhm.
That we're proposing.
So where would the board like to start? I
Where do
can
you
bring
guys want to start?
up sheets, I can change things in real time.
Well, I mean, to me, it looks obvious that all this vehicle equipment replacement that we're trying to put into the, our first year is going to need to shift. I mean, I think that it wouldn't be responsible enough. I wouldn't feel responsible fiscally to do all this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 vehicle replacement in 1 year.
We're not doing all six.
We're not.
So,
We're doing,
Just what is under the cost estimates that it looks like there's funding with it?
So you stop at 5.
Everything is still listed because it's up to the board to decide what gets cherry picked and deferred.
right, which gets moved down in line, okay.
If that's what the board wants. In other words,
But the way that we're proposing the budget as it is right now includes the vehicles that have the cost estimates listed there.
Yeah.
The vehicles that have the costs listed under the descriptions are the vehicles tentatively proposed for deferment? Is
Correct.
that how we want to phrase it?
Yep.
Okay.
Let me just,
That makes more sense. All right.
Why don't
I just give the board the bottom line
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
impacts of what happened
Yeah.
is doing all this, okay? As I'm bringing up the Excel sheet, and I hope it loads on here. It ends up being a 6.5% tax increase. We're taking 150,000 from fund balance. We're taking 50,000 from the reallocated reserves to help with the change there. So that's your bottom line. That's the impact.
Is that all of the impact? Because I was looking at a couple of other things. So we're drawing down, so I guess technically, and this, so we're drawing down the reserves by 105,000. We're taking on the $950,000 in debt.
Correct,
6.5 increase in property taxes.
correct.
I actually saw like 307,000 coming from general fund reserves or something, but maybe I misread.
There was only one amount. There was more coming out of sewer. You might be confusing sewer.
So sewer, it looks like we're running an $80,000 deficit,
Correct.
Um,
That's a planned reduce in fund balance,
right?
and there's a reason to that.
Yeah.
We are overstated in our fund balance for sewer, which has been a problem with the comptrollers. You're also noticing there's no increase in the sewer rate. So it helps get that down. Plus, we're using some of the reserve and we're trying to use some of the fund balance. So I think that's a nice plan because we need to reduce that fund
It
balance.
shows a better practice to the controller because we're bringing it back into alignment.
So we're
Yeah.
not doing what we used to, automatic 10% increase in
No.
every year in the sewer.
No, this year will be flat, and what we're doing is we're drawing on a balance in that fund. It's just simply too high. We've always been dinged. on that.
Correct. I mean, I'm not even looking at my sheet. I'm sorry, this is taking forever to
Yeah.
load. I believe it is over 200%.
Yeah, it
And
is.
it's-
I think
Yes,
that's,
it's always overfunded, yeah.
It's
So-
overfunded.
Right, it is a big percentage of the unrestricted fund and the sewer fund is a large, is like 200% or something of the appropriations, right?
Right.
But I think then the discussion that we would need to have is, what are the funds for and what's an appropriate level of funds that we need to maintain in the sewer fund? Because the comptroller, what they don't want to see is a lot of money in the unrestricted funds. But they're not saying, don't keep those funds if there's an appropriate purpose for them. That's where the reserves would come into play. So I think if we are drawing down that, for running a deficit of $80,000 in the sewer fund, it would be important to me to have that discussion. I guess the other thing that I'm seeing, though, in addition to the items that Dorothea mentioned, we're looking at only a 6.5% tax increase this year. But one of the reasons that I'm really glad that we have a draft capital plan in place is that it shows us what path it's setting us on in subsequent years. And so what it looks like in the next few years, based on these projections, is that without taking on more debt, we'd have a 35% tax increase, a 55% tax increase in the next two coming years. And we would also be drawing down the unrestricted fund reserves in the general fund to a point where by 2025, 26, I think we're actually in violation of our fund balance policy.
Actually, we're still in compliance because it's 10%, but
Okay, well, but we said 15 would be,
ideal for me is 15.
Yeah, so at
I know-
10, we have to have action to restore it to we want 10 to 15, and if we go below 10, even for a moment, we've got to have a plan to restore it to the adequate mark. So it's not just that this year draws down reserves a lot and takes on a lot of debt, it's that in the coming years, we're at a point where we have to have a corrective action plan to get things back on track. It's not a good situation.
I'd couple that statement that I would rather see what you're taking out of reserves and the pace of it to keep taxes lower. I'd rather allocate some of that to reserves so that future tax rates don't have to be as big a jump to meet the projections.
Okay, but we can't even do that because we haven't decided in the multi-year, if everybody's in agreement where the placement of those items are.
Yeah.
Until I know what you're looking at in equipment and infrastructure,
Yep.
we can't develop those projected budgets. As I said, even before the meeting opened, that I didn't play with 25 further out because my priority right now is year one.
Mhm.
Yeah. that
Year
makes
one.
sense.
You know, with the,
The subsequent years are going to.
we're gonna have to play. I mean, we found a way to take care of the road schedule for this year and a good portion of the equipment schedule for this year. That's, to me, is a win, but, you know, at the end of the day, that is a board decision with the criteria we were given from the last meeting. What happens in the subsequent years, the board has not made decisions. Yes, they agree with the timeline proposed by DPW. They want to move things, they feel the equipment goes here. Do they want to take out more bonds? There was talk about doing more bonds for
Or a ban.
road work or a ban. That's discussion and information. I don't have the data to input. So that, to me, goes more into the multi-year capital plan planning, not into the current budget year discussions.
I would argue that there's a degree of discretion involved in the tentative budget, and that discretion is the utilization of fund balance versus tax rate increases, right? Based on what we've included to date in the long-term plan, right? So the funding of what we've already decided we'd like to do, there's a discretion on your part as to where it comes from. My argument would be that I'd rather see some of the fund balance be dedicated to the reserves for future use than be taken down to get closer to the 15%. To Justin's point, by taking it out of fund balance, you then have the issue where the tax rate increases would have to be substantially higher
Correct.
in subsequent years, or you choose not to do so many of the things that we put in front of us. So to that end, let me ask this question. 1% increase in taxes, how much in dollars?
Maybe 10,000. It's very minimal.
That's right. How much are you taking out of fund balance?
150,000.
Okay. 150,000 out of fund balance. We can't, how many years can we do that?
We can't.
No, well, so you have 150 coming out this year.
Correct.
Could you do that again next year?
That would put us at 12% of the, so that's close to the 10% threshold, which the
Yes, and
company
that's-
makes us on, it's in violation of our own policy.
Right.
But that is also, with the board agreeing, they're doing everything in 25, 26.
But that's where the discretion lies. There's a choice.
That's why we're here.
Right, I understand. So
Yeah.
what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to
We're trying to go.
understand the discretion versus the decision. So you're suggesting to us, come back to the capital plan, see what we're going to do next year and years after. What I'm saying is what we put into 24, 25 is only a percentage of what was proposed in the 24, 25. If that gets pushed down, which currently none of that's embedded in the 35% and the 55% increase that's on your projection. So if we push any of what we're choosing not to do this year into 25, 26, or 27, these tax rate increases of 35 and 55% are going to have to be even higher or for longer.
Correct.
Okay. To me, the argument is 6.5% is nowhere near what it needs to be. And I don't want to see the fund balance go down as fast. I'd rather have it be dedicated to the reserves, knowingly that it's going to be funding these long-term capital projects and have more of the consistency of the tax base pay for that funding mechanism. So you could go the route of taking from the treasury, the bank, the general fund, and then punt on the tax rate increases down the road. I just think it's a little disingenuous. My personal preference would be to have it be higher for a more consistent period of time to get these things done.
Well, this is the direction I need from the board. Right now, I'm just presenting you one option.
Yep, and I'm giving my opinion.
I get it.
So if the money goes into reserves, it doesn't address the bottleneck. It just doesn't. We're kicking the can down the road.
There's definitely a lot of can kicking going on in the initial proposal here. So, and I think that's the question for the board. I don't know if the answer is to like do reserves this year or whatever. I guess one very positive thing is that with this plan, we can actually, for the first time, determine what the impact is of this year's budget on the next few years.
Okay, so
And
let's
I
do
think what's
that.
very clear is that
Let's keep going.
if we do what's proposed here, we're really doing it, we're really putting future boards in a bind. And I don't think that I'd want to do that either. So I guess, yeah, it sounds like the next thing is to kind of go year by year and say, is this a reasonable projection of what actually needs to get done? And once we do that, then we find out what kind of a bind it is for future boards, and therefore, whether it's reserve funding, tax increases, but, it's going to be kind of a circular process where we look at the plan, look at the current year, look at the plan, right, and then finally come up with a position that we're
So
comfortable with.
Zach, thanks for that, but I'm thinking, Zach, one of the things, and again, it's all the moving parts with purchasing equipment and when you sell the equipment, and part of addressing some of the equipment needs, not wants, needs, in this bottleneck will down the road get us back on the right schedule, am I correct, for the equipment, where we would get a higher return on resale? We would be able to manage that far more financially efficiently.
Correct.
Okay. So, there's a few other pieces here.
Well, I guess maybe one thing that we can do is kind of go to some of these items and talk about, what is in this plan, and is it all really 100% essential and agreed upon by the board? So I guess
That's why we're here.
to me, and I'll just mention a few items that kind of jumped out at me. I have an easy time understanding, maintaining, and replacing the stuff that we have right now, because it's something that we've depended on, it's something that we have a responsibility for. There are 3 new things, and if we're adding new things, I want to make sure the board has agreed to them, and that we're not just increasing costs without a reasonable return for taxpayers.
So dive
3
in.
new things.
Get your list going.
That's what I'm doing, Mayor, thank you. The 3 new things are the 2 new office divisions in the DPW, converting the loft into a couple new offices. And I think that the board should have a discussion about that, since if we've got like 6 people on staff in the DPW and we're putting 2 in offices, I want to understand how that administrative space relates to the costs and how we're doing business in the DPW. There's a new pickup, and I think the board should talk about what we're using new pickup for. If we're not adding staffing, what's the value add there? And then finally, the fence around the DPW yard. That's something that we've discussed briefly, but there hasn't been any board agreement on it. So I guess I would like to talk about those things as a board, figure out if we're all on the same page that those are necessary, or if not, push them out until the board has had that discussion.
Can you speak about the additional pickup? And I guess you didn't put in that this is the F-150?
Yes.
You should have made the notation maybe that it was an electric vehicle, part of the fleet plan, just for future reference.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
Well, yes, so over the last few years, we've been faced with, if the vehicle does go down, that we're in a struggle to get everybody around to the job sites. So, including myself, and that's, going from one place to another, to another, to another. A lot of the times I'm stuck walking, or I'm using my personal vehicle to pull it on the side of the road to go do this stuff. And that's if we have one vehicle down in the shop for whatever reason. If we have 2, then it kind of cripples us. So this allows us a little more better means of transportation of getting crew around. It's not that we're adding more personnel to the shop and that requires more vehicles. It's getting us up to a point where the current staffing has the means to be able to get around better. I've tried to address this by purchasing smaller vehicles like the Kubota, which is a tiny little mini pickup, but that has its limitations. And this will help address it in a more fulfilling way.
So this is for emergency.
Well, this vehicle would be for my
Daily
use,
Daily
which would
use.
free up truck 3 for general use.
And
Which a lot of the times when the crew is going outside of the village to go pick up stuff, taking a 1-ton pickup to go do that, which is a much larger vehicle,
to a cost, and
it's not as easy, it's not accessible. So truck 3 is usually the go-to for that, which means that I'm left walking or using my personal vehicle around. The purchase of the 150 could be countered by the points that we would get from being part of the Climate Smart Community Program and the clean energy
The Clean Energy Community
community.
Program. Two different things.
So in the end, the cost of the vehicle could be completely offset by those points and grants that we get from that.
Yeah, and that would be direct funding with no matching funds that we get back.
Okay, but we talked in our last meeting about taking out some of those climate smart community items because we are not sure enough yet about the specific funding for those. So I guess that would be one point. Also, if we're adding 2 new office divisions in the loft and we're getting a pickup, it sounds like we're both making space for people to stay in the office and providing transportation to get them out. So which one are we doing? How are we going to do both of those things?
I think there's-
We're addressing 2 deficits. You know, right now, you see my office is part of the shop. So anything that's happening within the shop is directly affecting my office. This would give me a bit of a separation, so when the diesel truck or a vehicle starts up right outside my door, I'm not inhaling
Breathing the fumes.
You know, right now, where Danielle is set up, who's basically the administrator for the Department of Public Works, who put this, all the formatting together for this capital improvement plan that you're looking at. She's working in the loft, which is exposed to both the extreme temperatures of winter and summer. It could be 110 degrees or it could be 40 degrees up there. So this is to provide some usable space in an appropriate way for us while we're trying to conduct work. Now,
if the loft is cold, I mean, this is just, I'm worried that even if we do, so I'm still concerned about, the administrative space and getting things done out in the field. And it just feels like I don't know how we're going to do both of those things without adding staff and ultimately adding cost to this. And I guess if the
I think
loft is an existing issue right
Why would
now,
we have to add staff? I'm not sure.
how do we think that because you're providing transportation for more people in the field and you're providing space for 2 people in the office?
I think maybe
yeah,
you missed it. This has been a deficit for DPW. This isn't like expansion. This has been what's been missing from
and
DPW.
us working in an office is not like Dorothea or Francine working in the office where they're in one location all day long. Me coming and going out of the office is constant, and I still need a means to be able to get around, and same as Danielle. Danielle's a laborer as well as she's an administrator. So part-time working in an office and part-time going out in the field and doing whatever. She plows the sidewalks in the winter just the same as everybody else. She goes out and trims trees in the summertime just as everybody else does. But she also doubles as a person that's in the office doing some administrative.
So when she's in the office, where, does she have her own office, or?
No, she's in the loft upstairs above where truck 2
Right,
parks.
so the
It's
table.
full of diesel soot because it's exposed to everything.
So this is for converting the loft into 2 offices.
Right.
If there's diesel fumes up there, how are we going to solve that with the division? Is that just by closing off the space?
And
Yeah.
ventilation. And no, there's going to be ventilation. There's going to,
Yeah, so sealing it off
Yeah.
so it wouldn't be directly exposed and then putting in proper ventilation. It'd be built to the standard of, the builder's code, but it would also provide us a means to be able to function halfway.
and it would be in compliance with OSHA.
It's kind of along the same lines as having a functional bathroom that's not directly adjacent to the table.
Right, and that's fine. I guess I'm just trying to understand. I'm trying to make sure that the board has the information to make this, because we haven't.
Sorry, I'm not trying to be a conflict.
The other thing that I'm looking at is that we're projecting $20,000 here, but the bathroom is a heck of a lot. That's $250,000. So if we're actually bringing this space up to spec, how realistic is the $20,000 figure to convert the loft, which we're saying now is subpar, into offices?
So that was kind of me spitballing what it would cost for me and the crew to
Internal work.
build this in-house. Right now, the loft is used as a means for storage of a lot of things. We're out of space. Every year, we go through and reinvent the wheel, trying to find just 3 square feet of space within that shop to be able to function a little bit better. And it's going to give us a pinch in the terms of being able to store stuff by converting the loft into office space, but it's still something that's needed there. If there's a better means, like building a completely new facility I'd much prefer it that way, because now we're not trying to adapt again, space that we are using in a different way, but it would be built as a functioning whole.
So you're working with what you have, and then your office would be up in the loft, so that space then could be freed up
Yes, my
downstairs.
existing loft, which is directly adjacent
For,
to
right,
bays.
the bays and the bathrooms,
Trucks get work
everything,
done,
I
and
know.
they get parked, would be then absorbed for storage.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just an idea of trying to come to an end in an area where.
Yeah.
it really
Yeah.
fits
Well, I
in.
appreciate the ideas and I appreciate the discussion, and I think this is exactly what the board needs. If we've got these costs in front of us, we need to talk about it and not just, it can't just be a budget line item that we approve without discussion.
Sure,
right?
and that's
And that's
why it's
why we're
also, the offices are at the bottom of that list, because in terms of priority, me prioritizing, some proper ventilation in an office that I don't have any ventilation is at the very bottom of that, in order to be able to get the crew to be able to get around the village more efficiently.
I think we also have to put in perspective, we asked the departments for wish lists, right?
These are needs.
Needs.
Okay, all right, so needs, but we didn't tell them they had to spend within their means either, right? So that's our responsibility to figure out how we can do that within our means. So when you say to somebody, what do you need, and you don't give them a budget to buy that stuff, it's easy to just kind of say, this is exactly what we need. So that's where we come in to say,
So
we
let's
see
make,
your needs, this is what we
Pick and
have.
choose what.
Yes, I'd like to add on to that too, about, the spitballing of the 20K, and also the fact that you guys can do the work internally, because the cost for the bathroom is based on prevailing wage, which drives up everything for a municipality, it's a fully loaded cost. Like if you guys could build the bathroom, that'd be great, and it'd be half the cost. But that's, it's just not in your purview.
Yeah, and this is, a project that we would take on as we had time to do so, little by little, picking advancing, but just to start that initial movement towards having a functioning office that, we would actually have sealed, office, so you're not smelling
Well, it's
what's
in
going on.
compliance with OSHA guidelines. Right now, it isn't. So it's another consideration. But it is, you're right, Lisa, it's at the end, bottom of the list, and it's up to us to sort through that,
And I think that's one of the reasons why when we sat down, that was an item that was pushed off. It was not found to be fundable in this year's budget. We agree.
so just a couple things from me. I agree, the additional pickup, so Zach, you started off commenting on when a vehicle's down, right, you need to get around. And when two vehicles are down, it's even worse. Well, the goal would be to spend money so we don't have vehicles down.
But you'll never get away from that.
True, but
we
generally.
can make it better.
You can make it better, so
Once we
they
start-
still want
once
for
we start-
service work, for inspection, stuff like that.
True, but once we start getting this done, this speaks to Justin's point, I don't think we need an additional pickup, but if aspirationally it comes through with grant money or the clean energy project money, what was that program called?
Climate smart community.
Climate Smart Community, if it happens through that, I think we can put it on the list and highlight it, but I don't want it in this year's budget personally. I would rather see having been in the loft, I'd rather dedicate 20 grand to getting you guys in some working conditions that are more functional. I've seen it up there. It's a tough place to work. You've got staff that needs to sit down and do some, work. For me, I'd rather fund that. The furnaces, I don't know how old they are and when you need to replace them, but you'll certainly have to make sure that you're doing that before they all break down and cost you more. For me, the retaining wall and sidewalk restructuring on Elm Street, it says covered in the budget, 5,000.
We are able to cover it within our existing budget.
Oh, it's in this budget, so it's done.
It's already covered. We're
It's
able to
done.
cover it within our budget.
But the reason why I left it in there, the reason why I left it, because it's phase one of 2 phases, because the removal of the tree, which is causing the damage to the retaining wall, is the first thing that's going to have to happen. The second phase, which is the more expensive part, is the rebuilding of the retaining wall and the replacement of the sidewalk that's caused because of it.
Okay, how much is that? That's 25,000.
Yeah, the project total would be 25 to 30,000.
Okay, so that's 25 or 30.
And
And I
then you
see
have the
that in
split of the
phase two.
20 in 2 phases.
But phase one's done, so what I would do, you're suggesting you don't want to get that work done until 25 or 26, right? That's,
For the retaining wall,
yeah, you're looking to push that out.
per prioritized list.
Prioritized list, okay.
And budgetary responsibility, yeah.
Okay, I'd just remove the phase one in here because it's a little confusing and just have it be phase two, right? So put in phase two, or just don't even do phases, just put it in there as what it's going to be in 25, 26, right? We've already done some work, just kick it out. We understand with the right description what it'll be. The comprehensive utility mapping, that's currently not in the sewer. That is something that needs to get done, right? I would like to see that in the sewer budget.
Actually, I'm sorry, that's my fault. It's in both
It's in
budgets.
both.
I included it.
It is.
It's within the budget.
Okay, so then push that over, put that 20 grand over in the sewer budget, and
Well, it's 10 for sewer, 10 for general.
Split.
It's a split.
it's a split.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
That's why you're
That's
not-
in the
why you're-
budget.
It's already accounted for.
Okay,
If you put it in, if we actually put it on the sheet, it messes with the numbers because it's within different budget lines. It's not as cut.
okay, but that number 9 is essentially already in the proposed budget.
It is.
Okay.
It's already covered.
Your number 5, the equipment, the pickup, that is in the budget right now.
Correct.
Okay, I would personally like to see that out. That would be my vote.
Which one?
The additional pickup,
Item number.
The additional, yeah,
Not
yes, I
item
would
number
agree.
The
with
elec-
that.
the electric pickup.
I would like for it to be aspirational. I'm perfectly fine if we get it funded and identify it. And as long as we don't chip the general fund down to 12%, we'll have funds available to front end it if we know we're getting the climate smart money. Going back to protecting the general fund more than the current budget does, and requiring, if we agree on these expenses, requiring tax rates to go up rather than spending against the general.
Are we ready? Do we have the numbers yet for the Climate Smart?
No, that's,
Don't even worry about it right now.
Because I know, in order to reach some of those benchmarks, we have
at
to.
this point,
Yeah,
Let me just put this out there. He's going to be on the agenda next week. Rob Richardson, who administers both programs, the Climate Smart Community Program and the Clean Energy Community Program for the Finger Lakes region. He's agreed to come and just talk to the board about it, and the climate smart items that we're pulling out. He's going to talk about the list. We had a 2-hour Zoom meeting with him yesterday to go through actions that we have taken, actions that we can take that are sort of within our reach to get these points. And he wants to address the board on that and bring everybody kind of up to speed, because we have the potential to get to the bronze level, which is, I'm trying to remember the funding at bronze, 25,000?
I don't know.
I know, I can't remember. And then if we go to the silver level, we're eligible for up to 100,000 easily. So it's a good thing, but I think it's helpful to have him come to the board next week, so
okay.
he can fill you in.
So is the board agreement that I'm removing the additional pickup from the budget?
Yep.
Does the board agree that we can put 20,000 in the budget to get the offices and lofts functional?
I agree to that, definitely.
I'm not convinced that it's going to come in at that budget. And I feel like if the DPW staff is doing that, including the insulation, not just drywall, but insulation and ventilation.
There'll be some.
Yeah, and if you're subbing out anything, it's not going to be a $20,000 project, is it?
I'm looking for anything. If you give me $20,000, I'm sure we can make something happen.
To that end, let's talk about this, right? So if we put $20,000 in the budget with the capital improvement plan, CIP notation, and you come to find out it costs 35 or 40, those funds go into the DPW building repair reserve fund. And then it builds over time for something that we need, that we're starting the funding process for. We've identified it in the budget, we're starting to fund it, it's a priority, but it gets pushed out because the costs are higher than what this 20 grand is. If it happens to be, you come back with a plan, be like, hey, we want to spend that money that we put in the budget. Honestly, you could spend the money that we put in the budget for it, and you figure out you can do it for 20, great. But if you come back and realize this is going to be a $40,000 gig, Okay, great, sit on it, this goes to reserve at the end of the year, and then.
So it's earmarked.
It's earmarked, and then we keep funding the DPW building reserve, and you build up to the point where you have the funds to do it.
Perfect.
So that means there's no
motivation
breaking
to
ground.
start
There's no breaking ground yet because he can't start the project and all of a sudden, because this
And that's
happens.
fine, because now that just gives you the means to be able to pursue it. So if I see, starting the process, it's not gonna be going out buying lumber and just start slapping it out. I gotta
Right.
price everything out, put a plan together, and then go from there. So once that plan's put together, if it shows that that money is not gonna be sufficient to fund
I'm
it,
gonna put it in there.
then we
All right.
go like what Dave was saying.
Now, here's what does happen, though. When you put it in the budget, and you put 20 grand in the budget line item for this, Zach gets to make these decisions. If he doesn't make the decision on that 20 grand, and it goes into reserve, then we make the decision to give it
Take
to
it
him based on a proposal that he's presented
Right.
us. But we know it's in the DPW repair reserve,
Right.
or maybe building reserve, one or two.
Buildings are-
So what we're saying is we're giving Zach the authority, if we put 20 grand in the budget, to make a discretionary decision
Whether it's
to
gonna work.
improve the loft or not
Mhm.
with that single line item. But it has to be towards the loft, and if you don't do it, it goes to reserve.
Only if you have,
Court approval.
only if this always ends with, as long as all your revenues came in as anticipated.
Yeah, year end.
Or said another way, yes, as long as revenues are sufficient to meet your budget, and assuming it's a balanced budget,
Correct.
right? And you never did a fund transfer out of it,
Right.
and, right, so.
But in the
Yeah, I know.
perfect world, that.
Sure, let's assume.
I just always want that codicil there that, it's never a guarantee until.
So, I mean, that general idea is interesting, and I could see how that could possibly work out. I guess it seems like, I'm worried that this is being construed as approval for something when we don't even have a plan in front of us yet. Basically just says divide the space into two spaces. We know there are toxic fumes from diesel vehicles. We know there's a ventilation concern, insulation concern, OSHA. And I mean, the first step to me would be having a plan, right? Wouldn't even Steve require that? There's some kind of a plan, especially for a.
Yeah, so-
That's what
Space.
he's doing.
Just a little backstory. While I had the architect who is designing the bathrooms for us,
Fran Obermeyer.
while I had him in shop, kind of just brushed over it real quick. So, to see if it was even worth pursuing, because there are some building restrictions already because of the way the design of the building is. So if the design of the building wouldn't even allow it, then it wouldn't be something that we'd be talking about today. So prior to that, I had Fran take a look at it, give me some ideas of things that could be done to make it compliant. Obviously, that plan would have to go through Steve, and Steve, we still follow
And
his
Steve
jurisdiction.
looked at it with him too, didn't he?
I don't think at that
Oh, maybe
point,
he didn't,
it was
okay.
Scott, Fran,
Yeah,
and myself
yeah.
that were talking about this, so Scott, the engineer.
Mhm.
And we saw that it was
Oh, he looked at
suitable
the square
enough.
footage, that's
Yeah.
what it was.
It was suitable enough to actually take it seriously if we wanted to do it.
Yeah, so it seems like maybe what we're doing is like, the first year is setting aside funding to draw the plans for it, including for the fumes, the ventilation, the insulation, the electrical, the wall placement. And then based on that, and then we earmark some amount in the coming year for actually getting the work done.
You could do it slightly different, too. You could just define 20 grand as you suggested it would cost, and we could define it today as DPW infrastructure repair reserve. Define it in the budget that way. And then if you present a plan that we all agree with, that it's the right thing and it's gone, whatever, we figure out the costs. We then look at it and say, okay, let's do a budget transfer away from the reserve to getting it done now. And if that plan is not suitable based on our agreement or whatever, we just don't fund it at that plan level, and we make some changes and alterations, and then and that might be a way.
The reserve set up.
Yeah, it gives us a chance as the board to see what you're doing before you go do it, rather than give you discretion today.
That's absolutely.
Yeah, Lily.
Regarding the offices, is there a reason why the expense would not be partially covered under the sewer? Since,
Very well could.
It
should.
It should.
Yeah, it should, part of
It
it should.
should. But we
I mean,
weren't
we're
dealing
using
with
it
it
for-
Well, that's still to be determined by the board making the decision that most of the stuff that we use on a daily operations.
So would you want to add a yellow to that?
I would. The
But
reason
not-
I didn't do anything with it, we weren't looking at it in this year's.
Oh,
But
okay.
if we're going to look at it, then yes, 20,000 of that would be a responsibility, would have 22% associated to sewer helping with that.
And then everything on this list would have a split.
Yeah, everything that's not currently in the budget, to the degree that we want to take it on, would have a split. So what I'm sort of thinking about right now in my mind is if we remove the pickup and we've got 50,000 in the current budget, and maybe we reallocate if it's general fund or tax revenue, right? But if we take the 50 grand from the pickup, we pull it away, we got 50 grand to spend, quote unquote, within the general.
Nope, you have 39,000 because that was split with sewer.
Okay, yeah, but the 20 grand is going to be split and other things are going to be split.
You're 19 ahead right now.
Right. So my idea would be to take the current tentative budget and at least adopt some of these other alternatives that frankly need to be done, right? And we're making a commitment, at least I did, to this DPW location, this building, that's, the toilets, right? The location, the funding source isn't there to move it. So this is where we're going to be for a while, and having functional office space at a reasonable cost, if you can present a plan, is appropriate in my view.
Does that answer the question that we began with for you, Justin? You had,
Well, we
said
talked
we'd like to
about-
see the board prioritize and,
Well, I think we've talked about some of the items in the first year and some of the things we didn't discuss. So we were saying that we want to leave some room for the division of different offices in the loft. The pickup truck is out and would be earmarked for the climate smart communities, the Rob Richardson spreadsheet. Maybe we can put his picture on the side of the pickup or something. We get it too.
I know.
We still, so those things sound reasonable to me. We should also talk about the fencing of the DPW yard, the chain link fence around the canal and all that kind of stuff. What are we doing? That's not, to me, I would push that out because we really haven't discussed that.
100%.
so
Yeah,
you would like to see that removed from this master plan?
Yeah.
Even though it has no bottom line?
Well, we're talking about 7,000 general fund and 1,540 sewer.
Okay.
Actually, it's going to have no budget impact because I was going to use surplus lines to help cover that
Yeah.
as they came up.
How
Just
many
it,
we don't have any surplus lines. We've got a budget deficit of $100,000 or something here.
I understand, but
Hang on.
I was hoping if he had money in contractual or this and that, we could shift it and cover those items so that it wouldn't increase the budget any more than it is. That was
It
the,
would be a line
I
reallocation.
don't,
yeah, it would be a line reallocation as needed if we're able to can do it.
And the other thing that we had talked about internally was just doing that, did you put it down as phases?
Split rail.
Yeah, we had talked about putting it in phases, because the split rail was only $7,000 or something?
$7,800 per contractor.
Okay, for a contractor to do the work, $7,800 to put in just the split rail component, which would give better definition and safety on the canal side, and be able to direct people appropriately and safely coming off the canal to the Arboretum entrance. I think that's money well spent, regardless of even doing the rest, maybe that's phase one or something.
All right.
Because that's $7,800 that we could, get it done. And also, you had mentioned potentially being able to do some of that, Zach, with the crew?
Yes, the split rail, I think, is in a wheelhouse to be able to do, to pick away at.
I have a post hole digger.
Yeah, I mean, we've got access to post hole diggers, shared services with the town, providing that they wouldn't mind loaning us the post hole digger.
Mhm.
We can pick away at doing it little by little, and then it's just the purchase of material. And the time.
I think that at least gets us going, it at least is like an initial phase. Because the chain link is the big one,
The
right?
chain link is out of our hands, that's something
Yeah,
that we
that's
don't
big.
have the means to be able to do, so
Okay.
that's a $27,000 cost.
Okay.
so that's not even there, though.
Yeah, so it's not represented here.
No, because it wasn't anticipated to be done in this year's budget.
Okay, but you mentioned it.
So the cost that you're looking
Yeah, I'm not
at,
sure
the
why it's there.
7,000, the 1,540, that's for just the split.
The split rail and the natural planting barrier?
Yep.
That's all that's for.
So
Yeah, but see, it should be in a category. Why isn't it in the sewer line and then the,
What, this one?
for the fence,
item number 8?
It's not in, because
because it wasn't part of what we were.
we
Okay, based on the last
figured if
conversation.
the DPW
Okay.
could do it, we could take it from
Yeah.
areas where there were surpluses in the existing budget. There's
Okay.
already money there. They got time to do it, let them do it, because that's more realistic than budgeting
Yeah, I think
for it.
so. Okay, now I see it.
But the bigger part of doing that, if they were to hire a contractor, is going to be the $8,000 for it to be done. I think we shifted the
Mhm.
The chain link,
chain link to next year.
Yeah, we did. That was the next phase. I
That was the
remember.
phase the
Yeah.
DPW crew can't do.
Mhm.
They can handle doing the split rail with existing funds in the normal budget.
yeah,
So let's
because
not you're right, it's not even going to
It's
show
not
up
gonna-
here.
it's
It's
not
not showing up here at all.
How much of this action requires approval from the board, or was this just about to be done?
there are still measures that have to be taken for us to be allowed to put this fence up, and one is getting permit from the Canal Corp, and then also to reach out to the adjacent property or as well,
Mhm.
to make sure that they are okay with us encroaching on the
But
property.
when does our approval take place based on the site plan or the presentation of?
I believe that would have to go before the board at some point to.
We did discuss it.
After,
That's why we we did discuss it, we discussed it, oh boy, when was that?
A while ago.
Before my time.
yeah, for my.
Oh, yeah.
We don't have any kind of approval for a fence. I mean, and you'd probably be talking about like HPV and maybe. site
Right, it
plan
still
if
has
you-
to go.
No, but I mean, in other words, it was set in motion, for sure.
So just a couple, on the excess money that you referenced that we had available to it, I don't personally want to use it for that. What I would rather have is fund reserve, DPW repair reserve, right? Or capital improvement for the building reserve.
Okay, what I'm saying is it's in there, it's the contractual, if they have a little extra here to go and use it. I'm not saying there's a $7,000 I can pull
Earmarked
out.
for it.
Earmarked.
Right.
It's build as you go if they get a chance. So if they got a couple $100 for lumber, they go down.
So this is in their standard budget line
Yes.
for,
If they can squeeze out a little bit of work here and there and the budget allows, yes.
Because then it doesn't belong in this.
what is it, it's just in the general fund appropriation somewhere?
Yeah, it's,
Buildings?
and I budget that line the same whether they were doing the fence or not doing the fence.
Okay, so I have a question. Those funds, when not used, we get a decision, we get a determination at the end of the year how to use them,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
And you're not taking any action on that line item until it comes before us.
Yeah, it still
anyway.
has a long way to
Okay.
go.
So to that end, I guess what I'm suggesting is, if you're thinking it's being funded through.
It's not an impact.
General line, right, that's already in there for DPW work, should we argue that line is too high?
No, I would say no, because if it isn't that, then there'll be something else.
But would it be better to have those funds in the DPW reserve or just go about it the way we're doing?
I would leave it. I didn't want it to have a budget impact because it might not get done. It might get done. If it gets done, we can see if there's some surplus in the lines to
Okay,
use.
so then when we put it on a capital improvement plan, what we're saying is we need to fund it differently than just the general line. You're saying this is being funded right now through a general line.
The discussion was initially, it was in the budget to be, it was on the capital improvement plan to do. It was 7,800. The determination from Zach and everybody was that they could do it in-house.
Mhm.
So if they can't do it in-house, then it needs to be on the capital improvement plan. They can do it in-house with existing funds available possibly through the budget. They'll do it that way. But there's a long way they have to go for approval. The board has to agree to the fencing, we have to get HPV. There's a lot of steps. So if they even get there sometime during the budget year, let's say next spring, and they got there's some extra surplus funds in there, then they can go ahead and start that project.
Yeah, if you guys would not approve the funding, then I probably wouldn't be presenting any kind of changes to the site unless, it's kind of the chicken or the egg, what are you doing first?
Well, I think if this is, if the board is responsible for the budget, then the items that appear on the budget should generally be the ones the board favors. If there hasn't been a vote for a fence, then they shouldn't be in the budget.
Right.
Well, then I'll put it on the next agenda. We need to secure that area. It has to be safe.
Is there anything
We
there
nearly
now?
hit people,
No,
There's nothing there now?
no.
No.
And since
I'm trying to
the
think where
nice
that is.
weather's picked up, we're having constant issues already.
Where is this fence located? I can't picture it.
The split route would be following the canal path, roughly 5 feet off of the canal path toward the DPW building. So running parallel to the canal path.
On the road or pedestrian?
I'm sorry?
On the road, like where the driveway
No,
is?
no, on the canal path.
Right,
So if you're following the canal path, like as you're walking past the
Yeah,
DPW,
yeah,
that fence would start roughly about where the garbage cans are,
yeah,
to the tree line.
okay.
And so it'd parallel that, and then there'd be another section that'd be following the Spalls property. So pedestrian traffic would be diverted to the other side of the fence and walking in the grassy area. rather than on-
and it would provide a clear, like, directional pathway to keep people away from the heavy equipment moving in and out of the facility,
Mhm.
the garages, and direct people right up to the Arboretum entrance.
Yes.
So it's a safer way for people to go. Yeah, Lily?
At the last trustee meeting, we were presented with a wish list from the Arboretum, and one of them was for signage. Would there be an opportunity to incorporate, or at least side by side, do the signs along with this? Would it be an opportunity to have signage?
To help
Where the
direct
railing,
and show.
To
where-
direct, to
where-
also say, this is a sign for the Arboretum, they're going this way, pedestrian, I'm just wondering,
Yeah.
because
Sure, why not work with them and see what we can do?
that could be a consideration
Part
of
of the
putting it
overall
in
site plan.
the budget.
And also part of wayfinding, to
And
get
there is
people there
money-
properly.
It seems appropriate.
Donated
Mhm.
in a fund that also could help towards.
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea. I think that if we're going to get things done, then our actions should address multiple goals. So DPW safety and security is one, public access to the recreational site is another. That's one that was mentioned in the comprehensive plan, which is connectivity of trails. So I would say that if we're trying to direct people away from the DPW into the Arboretum, then we talk about flattening down part of that berm and opening up that trail from the canal trail and providing a safe way into the Arboretum so that they have no need to go through the DPW land and funnel them out that way.
Yeah, and I believe Scott Harder had taken a look at how it could be laid out as well. So we can put that on the next agenda for the
And if-
board to see.
And if I can get the board to move along, this is
Yeah.
7,000, it's not really going to impact the budget in any shape.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
really got a lot to discuss here.
Okay, so that's on the next agenda.
Well, this leads to, call it 10 grand, right? I do think that there's a good amount of work around the DPW yard and its coordination with the Arboretum that would suggest costs are likely to be incurred. I'm perfectly fine adding another 10 grand to this year's budget to the DPW reserve fund, knowing that these costs are coming and that things will have to be done, and start the funding now rather than later, right? But by having it be in a reserve line, we have to make the definitive statement, we're going to transfer it from the reserve to the general to get it done in the here and now, or, right, we wait until subsequent years, but we start that process knowing we're going to do it. So again, what goes in this year's budget, that's what we're trying to figure out.
Mhm.
I would put 20 grand for DPW reserve for the shop office. I would add another 10 to that for the DPW for work that will eventually come between the Arboretum, the DPW, and the canal.
So you're going to earmark it for that?
Yeah,
The
and it would
collaboration
be-
with the Arboretum and the canal?
Well, it would be in the DPW infrastructure reserve. It would
Mhm,
have to
right.
go towards that type of work we're just talking about. And it's not going to come out of that reserve until we see plans that we all like, and we're like, yep, that
Oh,
sounds
and
good.
then we approve to take it off?
That's right.
Okay.
It's not just a budget line that is definitively
Okay.
done, right? It also knows that we're building up to it, so if it costs more later, we're already starting to fund it now.
Yeah, another related to that, I know this is just tweaking again with this year, but we've got 50,000 slated towards the DPW for the toilet and showers. I can't, was that the original amount that the board allocated there, Dorothea, or? I
The
can't
the
recall.
ARPA was the 50,000 that the board originally agreed to.
That was
towards
approved.
the bathroom. And then the rest was coming from sewer with general fund in this year's budget covering 12.5.
Okay. We don't have any other allocation of ARPA funds, but we do want to utilize that at some point, so we might want to include that for, if we're talking about the trail from the canal, maybe it goes towards that project, which also relates to DPW security, and we work on defining that entrance along the canal trail instead of the herbicide this year, and achieve a couple of objectives with one, funding from ARPA.
Well, this speaks to funding, right? Did we create a reserve that allows for parks and
I would have to speak to Jeff. I think it's general infrastructure that would.
But I think it's listed in it.
Yeah, I
Because we
believe
really
it's
put in a
It's
lot of
very
items.
broad in the
Yeah.
general infrastructure fund.
I believe so.
Yeah, we tried to make it as broad as
We
we
don't
could.
have a dedicated Parks and Rec reserve,
No, we do not.
No,
which makes it challenging to say, okay, we're going to commit additional funds to the arboretum improvements and the herbicides and pesticides. Right now, that's just going to go through the general.
If the board decides they want to take money from ARPA, and we need to make these decisions
Yep.
pretty quick, because I think there was also money that we were talking about for a generator for DPW. We need to get it allocated and spent. So
Yeah, the
this is
deadline's
something
coming.
that it isn't, if we know we're going to spend it in an upcoming year's budget, I put it into the budget. It doesn't have to go that route. We can amend the budget to you do it at any time. So if we're looking to move the money that was earmarked towards doing the
What?
invasive mitigation.
Oh, the invasives, yeah.
If that's what Justin was talking about, then we can go out and do that and decide that at any given time.
Right.
We don't have to have it in this budget.
Okay, so
I do have I'm sorry to kind of jump in, I've got a hard stop coming up here in a couple of minutes. But I guess, I think this has been productive in talking about the coming year in terms of the budget and the capital plan. We still have a pretty serious situation where we've got projected huge tax increases up to 55%, at the same time that we've got a drawdown of reserves to a point where it violates our budget policy within about a year and a half. If we follow this. So we've got diverging.
what do you think we should do?
We have to, I think the proposed budget that we have right now is not realistic. If we're considering the multi-year capital plan to be realistic, then the current budget that we have for this year is not realistic, right? Because it basically just says all the problems are going to happen to the board after the next election. And I don't think that's a responsible
Then what do we do?
to take.
What do you?
I think we've got to smooth it out more. I think that we've got to acknowledge the fact that we can't separate the multi-year capital plan from this year's budget. I think that we got to divide things up better and look at how bad it actually is on this year's budget. And then based on that, we have to say, how are we going to get this stuff done? Or is there other stuff that really doesn't have to get done?
So to that end, and I'll just make a proposal for perhaps another look at a tentative budget. You have 150,000 coming out right now from the general fund. I think that speed of withdrawal is inappropriate, right? I would personally prefer 50-ish, maybe 75. And the reason I say 50, let's take 50 as an example. That means you draw down 50 perhaps for 3 years, right? Spreads it out, takes the tax increase and puts it on now, and then subsequent years, Justin, to your point, it's less, or we continue to work with the capital improvement plan, and we just continue to ask the question, how far does it go? You could go so far as to raise taxes even more to fund reserves to ensure that you get this capital improvement plan done, right? And that's the argument, like how far do you go in raising taxes when you haven't fully vetted out? And this is great work we're doing, right? But we're not done, and it probably won't be done before the budget has to be adopted, like the finality of the capital improvement plan. But the guts of it are all here. And what it's telling us is we have a lot of work to do, right, in terms of figuring out funding or not doing it.
Well,
So-
what it's also telling us is that we have such a bottleneck of needs, not wants, that have accumulated over the years, with not enough either tax increases or putting things into reserves, it's all catching up now. This is exactly where we are.
Sure. So,
Yeah.
so the challenge is making sure that we're being genuine with the public and recognizing that we're not just going to steal from reserves to show a smaller tax increase. I think we hit up with, it's going to be considerable, right? If you go from 150 to 50 out of the reserve, the general fund, that's 100 grand, which to your earlier point when I started, that's 10% additional. That's a 16.5% tax increase.
I need direction from the board.
Yep.
We are running out of meetings.
Yep.
We're running out of time. You have a meeting for the 14th. I have 2 members not going to be here. We have a meeting on the 20th. That is when the tentative budget is due. So I need solid direction. Am I increasing taxes beyond the 6.5? You're telling me to take, reduce fund balance, removing from fund balance to 50.
Yeah,
How would you like me to do that? Because I'm taking out the truck, I'm adding stuff into reserve.
I'm sorry, yeah, so I think, and my ride is here, so I'm going to take off, and apologies for running out here, but I do think that we need to smooth it out here. We can't just, kick the can down the road, especially with we're working at the cap plan. We've got to acknowledge some of what we're coming up to by assuming more of that this year. We can't have a trajectory where we're going to be violating the fund balance policy in a couple of years. And, when we look at that, I think we'll have to iterate back and look at the multi-year capital plan to see if either that's wrong or if, we are on this, we have to put this budget in front of the public.
Would you think the 50,000 is where you're comfortable this year, rather than 150?
I mean, we can't draw down 150 is just like you're going to run that fund dry and be in violation of policy, and the comptroller's going to.
No, we understand that, but the question going forward that Lily's asking, is 50,000 something the board can agree on, or 75?
Where's the
75.
comfort
I think that
level?
depends
What's
on-
that number?
Well, the number, either way, we're not violating the policy this year, but I think the big question is, what is the level of reserve that we want? Or at least said in the last meeting that even 15% is not enough. And the policy should actually be bumped up.
I think,
10% is not enough.
so I think for this year,
Thanks, Jesse.
thank you. I think for this year, let's see a budget, okay, where you pull it down by 50, you adjust taxes appropriately, and then as the budget officer, with assistance from the administration, you don't like what the tax number is, then look at the other appropriations and make appropriate adjustments. But from a capital plan, what we're doing is we're saying the things on this budget, okay, the things that you've already put in other than the truck, sounds like we're all pretty much in agreement with.
Yes.
We got to move these things forward. We've got the shop office and some money coming in from fencing and the securitization of the Arboretum and DPW. That's another, let's call it 10 grand. So you're bringing 30 in, you took 50 out, so it's 20. That's 2% of the tax rate, right?
No.
All right, so you do the math, we'll figure it out what it is later. Oh, you're right, 39. So it's-
And the
Yeah,
six- the six-
you've gained like $4,000 or $5,000.
Yeah, the 6.5%, what do we average that out per household?
That's about $100 per household more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be $100.
At an average.
On an average.
300 of an assessed value.
Sure.
Yeah.
So what I'm suggesting, though, is this idea that we take what we see in the capital plan, right? All the work that the different departments have done and brought forward. We're essentially saying, yeah, we need to move this forward. And there's a lot behind it that we're going to have to work on too.
Yeah.
Right. And I agree, the rest of it needs to be smoothed out. I didn't smooth anything
I
past this year because I didn't have the time
Yep.
between the
Right.
meetings.
So let's take the budget, hit reserves by 50 grand, right? To Justin's point, maybe 50 is even too fast to get it all done. But I'd rather be a little smaller and then slow it down than be all at once and then have to be like, holy cow.
And also, I'm just thinking, this is a part of a discussion that Zach had with us too, that as you start to recover the equipment schedule, other lines go down, because now there's not a lot of the maintenance, there's not a lot of the downtime. I'm hoping over time,
That's the intent, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So
because-
maybe it clears up next year
Yeah.
where you're coming in on these lines. But I think when we see 15 or whatever the tax increase is, right? And we look at that and say, okay, is this what we want? Or do we want to hit the appropriations and reduce things? And I'm not saying strip it entirely,
Mhm.
but there may be some things in there that, we don't need. I would take out the grant writer for now,
Mhm.
right? I would take out other things to get that 16% down to maybe 10, right? Or 8. And I got to leave it up to your discretion to come back to us with those ideas.
Well, we have to have that discussion sooner than later.
Yes,
So,
all right, so then should we do another meeting?
because you're giving me a challenge that.
I agree, Marcy, I need some
Insurmountable.
support. So I think we need another meeting, so.
And keep in mind too, like we did last year, right? You're presenting a tentative budget. We're either assuming we adopt it, okay? Or we can always modify it after,
Oh, sure,
like we did
oh,
last
sure.
year. So
Absolutely,
this
but
isn't, I know it's a deadline. I know you have, as the treasurer, right? As a budget officer, you're required to present us a tentative budget. We can adopt it or choose not to. Assuming we work on it together as, good people, we can adopt something, knowing though that it's still modifiable and adjustable.
absolutely, but I would like our tentative budget to be as close as humanly possible to realistic.
Correct.
Because,
There's a percentage, is there not a correction that can be made? In other words,
no, there isn't. You're justifying your correct changes in your resolutions when it goes in front of the public. But what we present to the public, I would like it to be pretty much what we're going to do. You make some minor changes or major changes, whatever, you're going to justify it to the public. That's up to you guys. I just, as you can
We're
see, the
clear.
more we
Okay,
change
we're
these
clear.
sheets.
We're
Yeah.
clear. So, okay,
Can I ask you, sorry, go ahead in there.
so it's just next steps here.
Mhm.
Do we need another meeting?
Oh, we definitely need another meeting because
So let's
we
come up
haven't
with a
even
date.
looked at the line by line.
Yeah,
No,
we
we
haven't even gone
haven't.
through it.
I have a question for you with regards to this year's reserve. So in the budget for this year, we did have significant funds going into reserve,
Correct.
right? In this budget, you have nothing going into reserve, other than what we just identified here with these few small items.
Uh-huh.
How much do you anticipate in this year's budget will we actually hit of that reserve funding? We had 140,000 in reserve funding allocated in the budget. What do you anticipate for this year being?
I can't give you a number yet.
What would you guess?
I
10
can't.
grand, 200 grand, 0? Because that's money to work with.
Well,
for getting
what
to the capital
I'm
improvement plan.
seeing right now, because we have two factors that are happening. We have the money we spent to cover the 75 Monroe consultants that's coming from fund balance. We have the 100 grand we're paying GPI that's coming out of fund balance if
We don't get the bond.
we don't get the bond. So I have to offset that. If I can cover it within the budget and not take it for fund balance, it's like a wash.
So I don't
it's too
personally
early.
I don't want GPI paid for on last year's budget. And I don't know if you need a motion to that effect, but I would rather have it be on this year's budget or this year's decision
Well,
in general.
it's out of this current year's budget. It
They've
would
already
come.
rolled this for us.
So they've been building for us.
We've been paying that all
Okay.
It's
along,
already-
so it's already coming
All
out.
right, so let me ask you this question. If we issue the bond, are you essentially paying back for the excess that was available, and then we can make a retroactive decision to put that money in reserves on last
Absolutely.
year's budget? Okay, beautiful, thank
Absolutely.
you. Okay,
If
so
we
what
had to-
that's
if we
telling
had to pay
us,
the bill.
all right, so this is good. What that's telling you, though, is you have approximately 100,000 at a minimum that is available on last year's reserves. If we issue the bond, obviously we have the bill to pay, right? So then you can pay back last year, that money's in reserve, and currently we have nothing in the capital improvement plan being identified as using reserve funding, right?
Yeah, I was actually using 50,000 for the.
Yes. Where is it?
In a reappropriation of some money.
Something, I
We did,
can't even
know.
look at, I have to look at it.
Okay.
We'd have to look at it. It's 50
It was-
it's just 50K from one of the reserves.
But that's
Yeah.
the money that's in a reserve,
Yes.
Right, we were
not part of the
thinking,
general fund. that
it
we're
was
talking
going to be
about.
part of the reallocation of the reserves we have existing that we haven't been able to use.
Mhm.
Yep.
Thought it was a good use to go ahead and take 50,000. I think we were trying to use it towards equipment. It was
It
vehicles.
was a vehicle.
It was vehicle.
But we'd have
So
to-
we were hoping to use it towards that to help with the vehicle costs.
Can you do one other thing, and I don't know if you guys want to see this or not, but I wouldn't mind seeing, in looking at vehicle truck one and the Bobcat skid steer, where you're talking 330 $325,000, right? I wouldn't mind starting to try to fund some of the additional vehicles that we need, because when you get into 2025 and 6, you have another 600,000 of vehicles.
Yeah, it doesn't go away.
It doesn't go away. So the idea of smoothing out the reality of the cost of these vehicles rather than continuing to push it. I know we're spending money on some stuff, but we still have to think in advance to future stuff. I wouldn't mind seeing the next iteration of this show at least 50 grand going into vehicle reserves.
From where would the 50 grand come from?
Texts.
Oh,
Or the decrease in other future appropriations. But in the next tentative budget, I want to see it in there with the idea, right, of can we lower appropriations, or do we just simply cut it out because the tax rate was too high? But I want to see what it looks like. Do you guys agree, or do you not want to even go down that road?
Throw it in.
All right,
Yeah, let's see it.
put it in, see what it looks like?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yep, what we're not doing,
Composition.
yeah, what we're not doing is we're not putting in the funding for Sutherland. Right, remember last year, we put in a line item for essentially the anticipated cost of the bond for Southland Wood. And we put that in our reserve fund. And one of the reasons why we had $138,000 going into reserves last year was to make sure that we had the funding available to make bond payments for the eventual bond. What we're not doing this year is putting in the same thing for the Sutherland project. What we're saying is we're going to punt. So what we tried to prepare for in advance last year, right, and we now have some funding available. Obviously, we might use it to pay GPI, but we're going to get it back, right? We're not putting in that anticipated bond cost for the subsequent year. So to the challenge that Justin's presented, and you did on these nice forward-looking sheets, I believe the 35 or the 55% increase did include the potential future costs of Sutherland.
Correct.
So at least it's in there. But we're not pushing that forward but it's in there as a bond payment, or it's in there as?
No, it's in there full
as a
cost.
lump? Perfect,
It's in there as a lump.
perfect.
One of the
and it's
suggestions I
two
would have said.
phases. It's in
Yeah,
two
it's 2
phases.
phases. One of the things I would have suggested is putting in a bond payment or a
Instead of a
band.
lump.
Mhm.
So this goes to, I think, if you have the time, I don't know if you will, but in these longer-term projections, given the nature of the conversation we've had today, the concern about the future big bump up in 26 or 27, instead of it showing as a lump
Mhm.
for the infrastructure,
Mhm.
can you put it in as a 15-year bond at 3 or 4%?
I can throw a payment in.
I would rather see the payments.
If I throw it, and that's the direction I need from the board, if I
Yes.
throw a payment in there, you're going to like your numbers a lot better, but I didn't want to project debt, more debt onto the board unless they were in
Well,
agreement.
yeah, but hang
I
on,
kind of
let's
agree.
talk about the debt, because I see where you're going with this. We are at what percentage of our debt ceiling?
0.3.
0.35 or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something.
So I think what you're saying is realistic. It's realistic.
And I would
It's saying,
point
how the heck
out,
are we going to do this?
I would point out, we're
I
dropping,
hear you.
one bond payment comes off after this coming budget
Mhm.
year, that's 50,000. Plus we
Yes.
have another 12,000 coming off of a vehicle lease.
Mhm.
So I pretty much can throw it
You
in.
can wrap it
Your
back
your
in.
payment for what I'm projecting for next year would pretty much be the same for the
Yeah,
upcoming
yeah.
years.
So then what
And
we.
get us further down the road.
That's
Pun
right, and then
intended,
once you
Sutherland.
kind of go up to a plateau on rate increases,
Yeah.
you can settle in because your bond payments are fixed.
Yeah,
over
Right.
the
It's a
15-year
known
window.
factor.
If you don't like what that rate is, right, and it's too high when we get to, okay, we go into appropriations and we say, do we cut services? Do we cut staff?
Mhm.
Do we run lean, right? How are we getting the things done? These are priorities, not that staff and wages and operations aren't, but sometimes you got to make hard challenges, and these are things that need to happen, right? And so this goes to getting it in the budget and then going to the line items and maybe stripping stuff out or just accepting it.
No, I can make this look much better with adding
Yeah, so let's do
or
that.
bands.
Mhm.
So you were saying the 21st of March is the meeting right before we have to have the.
20th.
20th is the
20th, we have a budget meeting on the 14th right now scheduled. We have a budget meeting on the 20th. The 20th, is a huge day. I have to have a tentative budget by that date so I can have it to the paper.
Yeah, it has to
So do
be
you think we can
posted.
have another one on the 19th,
Oh, I'd gone it before that.
the 18th? Well, actually, it's because the week before, we've got 3 meetings. We have
We'll set up the cops
trustee
in here,
meeting,
right?
right, over, or we've got 2 meetings at least.
Let me take a look at the calendar, I'll float some dates to the
Yeah,
board.
she'll pull the board. Okay,
All
well,
right.
that might be an easier way to go. Get it done. Yeah, Zach.
Yeah. So as for preparing this for the next meeting, the capital improvement plan sheet we're looking at, I'll leave everything as it is with notes showing what is being deferred in some fashion, or what is going to be absorbed by the budget and does not necessarily need to be on, right?
If it's being absorbed, it's already
Don't put it on.
something,
The ones that you
then
would-
leave it in there. I mean, and just showing it's
Okay.
absorbed.
It's just,
So stuff that is earmarked, do you want it left on here with just a note as earmarked?
Such as?
Well, I've got the existing loft areas.
Oh, so what I would do there is under funding source, right, put
reserve.
reserve, like, yeah, put DPW reserve,
Mhm.
and then put the amount under sewer and under general,
And break it up.
Yeah,
right? For
put
the,
the push, it's going to be a reserve funded in, well, it's going to be a budgetary item, but it's going to show up in a reserve. It's not going to have its own line.
DPW support
So I will leave
expenses.
it on here, but just, I'll let you do
I'll
your
work with you,
the
yeah.
numbers.
DPW, I do the same thing. Get the comprehensive utility mapping numbers over on the right, so we know they're in the packet. Kick out the retaining wall, because you're just doing it next year.
Yep, that's
and-
being marked
right.
as tree removal instead of actually as a project or regret.
Until the hanging furnaces break, I'm going to say we keep them, put those into next year.
Okay,
Because when they break, we need new ones.
Yep.
If
How
they
old
don't
are
break,
they?
just keep what you got.
How old are the hanging furnaces?
old enough to still have scanning pilot lights.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're old, they've got to be 40 years old.
40 years old, oh my gosh.
Yeah, instead of, yeah, electronic
Yeah.
ignition.
For the vehicle equipment replacement for truck one and Bobcat, I don't care where you put it, but under funding source, put equipment vehicle,
Reserve.
yeah, equipment reserve, or vehicle reserve, right? And then
Okay.
put the dollar amount, it doesn't matter where you put it under truck one or Bobcat's tier, because it's reserved. So it's just starting to fund an extra 50 grand for vehicles,
Okay,
right? And then the wrought iron restoration front porch balconets, I mean, that probably should be done. Maybe we can source that through somebody else. Maybe we get some help from somebody, so aspirational.
I included it in this year, it's actually a safety issue.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
Yeah, you can't, we put some tape on there, you cannot, we
Yeah,
cannot let
that's
it go
literally
any
being
further.
held together.
Someone can get cut,
Okay,
we gotta have it done.
okay, so here, then put that 14,005 in the budget.
It's in there.
No, I'm sorry, here, on the sheet, show that it's coming.
I already have it in there, it was already funded within the existing meetings. But,
So am I
This year's
pulling it
budget.
off of
Yes.
this sheet then?
So we're
Yes.
pulling it off of here then.
no, it's in next year's budget, it's in there, I'll fix it, so.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so what I'm doing is I'm just looking through down this list, what's the general fund funding and what's in the budget?
Right, no, some things I already have funded in the budget, and then we added these sheets and did them, and I,
Got it.
Okay,
Okay,
so
so
we'll throw.
it's just how it's.
Get down.
Yeah, that way you read, you see it.
You're right.
Yeah.
ARPA, I see ARPA. How much money do we have in ARPA total?
I have one question on that, the $20,000 ARPA fund for the video sound upgrade. That can be discussed as well? Or is that in stone?
nothing's in stone, but the board agreed that we need to do the upgrade here for the video and sound and the problem with people watching on Zoom.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
if we get enough
I got-
find of something that needs to be done to the building, the balcony or something.
Oh,
If we have to make
the money,
choices.
I know, but we have the money for the wrought iron, right?
no.
And the
right-
Oh, not the wrought iron, I'm sorry, I was thinking of the repurposing
The
of the
balconets
grant.
and all that.
No, never mind, I misspoke. I
The
misspoke.
balconets,
Mhm.
that's all going through the dormitory.
That's part of it's
grant.
repurposing that
Yeah, the
grant.
front with the pillars
Not the
and all
wrought
that.
iron.
Pillars and
That was
the
my
floor.
That's
mistake.
all through that grant.
Yeah.
But I
But
agree.
about the wrought iron could not be because it's a refurbish, it's not brand new.
Okay.
I agree, Lily, that the ARPA on the upgraded sound and video, we need to reevaluate that. I mean, this is a 2020 issue, we never had Zoom ability before, now we have it, and that's great, but, I mean, that's a lot of money right now, and we've got other things we've got to.
I'm going to say it one way to the board. Right now, doing Zoom, I love the public can join us that way. It's terrible. The sound is awful.
They have another choice.
They,
They do?
They have another choice, and everything can't be perfect, so we're trying our best. I mean, the budget is, look at it.
I agree.
I'm just
but
saying.
it's not touching
we're
the
gonna
budget.
cut.
It's not touching the budget. It's coming out of ARPA funds.
Right, but ARPA, we have other places we could maybe.
For example, if I prioritize work with the Arboretum, protecting the yard, incorporating signage, creating a path
Safety.
into the Arboretum for
For people
safety
walking.
reasons, for pedestrians, and opening that space up to people in a way that it isn't currently. And I want to prioritize that
Over
over
20,000.
better
When we have
vehicles.
two
for-
people online sometimes,
Right.
I mean, really?
Honestly, if I had my way, I'd go ahead and kill Zoom. Zoom's cost
Me
us
too.
over $1,000 a year.
I would too.
But,
Maybe that's one of the line items we strike from the budget.
well, we're already into a current agreement.
I don't know,
Just-
hang on, before, we're kind of focusing on a donut hole and not the donut. First of all, you want to make sure that the public has accessibility no matter what,
I agree.
And they
no
do.
matter what.
They do.
Some people can't get here in person. Some people always
But
Zoom.
for years and years and years. we've
Yeah,
never
well,
had to-
welcome to the,
Right, but we also
2024.
have a budget that we've got.
I'd like to finish my sentence, please. I think we have to, as many ways as we can enable people to have access, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Zoom is here to stay. This technology is here to stay, just as cell phones when they weren't around. Now they're here to stay. To cut out Zoom, we can't do it. We need to have that access.
It was a
I'm not
little,
gonna- I'm not
for
gonna
me,
cut it on
for me, it was a little tongue-in-cheek, by the way.
Yeah.
It was a little tongue-in-cheek. But the point is,
The point
the
is,
upgrades relative to where we are now, I've watched a lot of the Zoom videos over time, right? And you can hear reasonably well and understand what's being discussed. From a prioritization perspective, with regards to ARPA funding, I agree, we can continue to have conversations. But none of that really affects what we're talking about today, because that's kind of its own little,
It is,
so.
totally. Okay, so you're going to poll for another date.
I am,
We have action items.
Yep, we
Everybody
do.
clear, you guys clear moving forward? Okay, mostly, well, we're all here, we can
We're all
always
saying
ask
just
additional
that.
questions.
No, I think I'm in a good place. There might be some corrections that you see next time that, well, this is a moving thing.
Yeah,
it's a dynamic
It's never
document.
gonna
In
be
progress, we're in progress.
Yes.
Yes,
And
in process.
can I just say one thing about the tentative budget? I mean, if this comes back, and obviously the tax rate's really high, my hope is we get a lot of comments from the public and input from the public, and then we go back and revisit, and we work with the public to the degree that they're participating. What would you see us on, right? It's this idea of maybe ask for public input, because these things that we're putting in the capital plan really can't go away. And then you got to look at services and how we're providing those services, and what do we take away? Or do we do neither, and we just understand that this is where we are?
On that note,
Everyone shut up.
I make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Oh, we have doppelganger seconds.
trustee Marshall.
Aye.
Trustee Coe.
Aye.
Trustee Lampier.
All right.
Mayor Plummer.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, very good work.
Thank you for lunch,
Really.
everyone. It was
You guys-
Thank you.
Whatever, to the
Thank you
point
for
where you
doing
guys
the
are
lunch.
mostly satisfied with what you see.
Are we paused?
We're building a structure that's.
Yeah, thank you for all your
Built to
work.
understand it. And then you got to ask the real hard questions. Are we doing too much?